It's just got 8:30 a.m. Thanks again for joining us on Morning Live Sport. Now, sports medicine and mental health are important elements in a person's makeup. New developments in science, machinery or technology and even literature are moving at a rapid pace. A meeting of minds is a good idea to bring everyone up to speed with the idea of sharing new developments. And so to this end, WHX Cape Town have organized a get-together. And to talk about this, we've roped in Portfolio Director for WHX Thrive, Tom Coleman, as someone who has won almost every major trophy available in the sport of rugby. We've also invited former Springbok and World Cup winner Brian Habana. Good morning, gents. Thanks so much for joining us. I was going to start with Tom, but Brian, I actually have to start with you. I mean, you've made the transition from being on the field to doing so much behind the scenes in the sports marketing space, in assisting athletes as well. What drew you to get involved in WHX Thrive?
Yeah, good morning. Firstly, Cape Town is rated by Time Out magazine's best city in the world. You know, what a phenomenal place to be hosting with incredible infrastructure. We know what a world-class facility the ICC is. For me personally, my journey from the rugby field to entrepreneurship has been very deeply rooted in the principles of empowerment and holistic well-being. So Thrive by WHX, seamlessly aligned with all those values and, creating wellness, institution of upliftment, but in that environment of creating better well-being for a city that is so beautiful. And apart from my own experience and aspirations, Thrive allows me, to add to that entrepreneurial journey that I'm on, while genuinely seeking to uplift the community. So pretty excited what it's going to be a phenomenal event.
I mean, I totally get it. Tom, the sports scientist in me is so interested to see who you're going to bring together as speakers. The former personal trainer in me is wondering, how are you going to take what everyone discusses and make sure that somehow it trickles down all the way to the average person so that we actually do start getting healthier in South Africa?
Yeah, I think the biggest key is really, as you said, is bringing those ambassadors and key minds together. And that's where, some of the topics that we're covering in the wellness, sports and fitness sector. And we'll make sure that this is the kind of ecosystem for Africa. But also, I think, for South Africa and also for the continent, we want to attract as many, key-minded people as possible.
How are you selecting speakers and contributors?
I think we've started off with some fantastic ambassadors like Brian already, so we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
And that list keeps on growing. We do have the UFC star and legend Drickers that's going to be coming and be part of the event as well, which is fantastic. And we've also got lots of other, sports stars across the continent that are going to be taking part.
Also, another thing, it's not really an inaugural event. It feels like that. It was Africa Health and you've rebranded. What prompted that move?
Yeah, I think, as Informa Markets, we are the largest events organizer in the world. And healthcare, we have a huge footprint across the whole of Africa. We have, events in East, West, and our main event is Africa Health, which is the largest in the continent. And over the last few years, we've kind of been really approached to move into the fitness and wellness space. And I think this is really, a good synergy between health and sports and wellness.
Brian, I think there are two topics that I suppose spring to mind for me when it comes to thinking about your involvement, your desire to make sure that youth are brought up, to the highest playing levels, and then also perhaps former players making sure that they continue to remain fit post-playing. Am I spot on or am I off?
The latter part of your question, you are spot on. I unfortunately probably haven't remained fit, so I think this Thrive by WHX is a great opportunity to get back. If you look at someone like Stefan de Blanche, who is probably in the peak shape of his condition.
I know.
He transitioned from professional sports to everyday life. It's really underscored by the importance of a balanced approach to life, and I think wellness in general is such a key topic. My wife is also a sports scientist, so her just getting me out of bed in the morning saying, like, your professional rugby career was great, but you've got to live until you're 120, which I think is important. And for this conference by Thrive, the comprehensive focus on the physical health aspect, the mental wellness, stability, as well as that sort of financial element, mirrors, I think, a very multifaceted support structure that so many people need. We know how big that need is, particularly in a country like South Africa that has just such a big underserved community. And hopefully, the topics that are going to be discussed, the ability to inform so many more people. Tom talked about ambassadors. We've got Renee Naylor, who's a double World Cup winning Springbok physiotherapist that's got some phenomenal intake from a global sporting perspective. And those are just some of the key people that are being involved, which I think is going to bring this holistic wellness understanding and experiential opportunity to hopefully not just Cape Town, the whole of South Africa, and hopefully even further abroad in terms of the African continent.
Yeah, Tom, my final question to you, I think that's an important point that Brian brought through, is the holistic wellness. There are a number of activations taking place. Give us a sense of what people will be experiencing throughout the event, not just from the talks, but the physical activations that will be taking place.
Yeah, so one of our biggest partners for the event is actually WHX. So they're obviously a world phenomenon at the moment. They've got a huge following. So over the 3 days of the event, we'll be doing a kind of smaller version of the WHX activities, but that will bring together some of the fantastic athletes like Brian also to take part in some of those activities, and also bring in some of the public and the fitness enthusiasts to take part.
I believe I've been roped in to do that WHX event there, actually. The WHX team asked me to participate, so I'll see you guys there. Brian, my final question to you. I can't have you on the show with asking you a rugby-related question, but I think, if you compare the 2007 champions and team compared to the Stronger Together team today with Rassie and Sia and just the changes that have taken place, I mean, having been involved in SA Rugby and looking at the leadership, what are your thoughts on how they've actually been able to imbue the Stronger Together, not just in the squad, but also in South Africa in general? What was the key ingredient there?
Yeah, I think firstly, collaboration has always been a key driver. And I think when Rassie came in, South African rugby was at a very dire stage of its history.
Yeah.
And, Rassie made some really hard decisions early on. Appointing Sia Khaleesi as the first Black African to captain the country back in 2018 was a really momentous moment. And I think for me, 2019 was without a doubt probably our proudest moment as a country. To have a Springbok team that really speaks to, a big portion of our country, the likes of a Sia, Makazole Mapimpi becoming the first player to score a try in a Rugby World Cup final, which possibly doesn't say anything about my career. But, to have the likes of Makazole, Keslin, Lukhanyo, these phenomenal players that just speak to South Africans in its truest form. In 2007, when I was winning a World Cup, Sia was watching that in a Shabine in the Eastern Cape.
I know.
And all of a sudden you have these real, true, inspirational figures that really speak to South Africans. And the collaboration, the understanding of that team playing for more than just what happens within the four lines of the rugby field. And as a South African rugby fan and supporter, it is just so phenomenal to have these heroes that not only unite our country, that truly represent our country, but do so in the most humble, phenomenal way possible. And I think it's day 2000 odd of being Rugby World Cup champions. So like everybody else, I'm hoping that come 2027, that Springbok team with a lot of potential new changes, with youngsters coming in, going to go do the country proud in Australia. But so phenomenally proud to see what they've done, and long may it continue.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate that insight, because as I mentioned, you've made that transition to influencing what's happening in the sports marketing and admin space as well. Tom, thank you so much for sharing more info on WHX that's taking place in Cape Town. I look forward to meeting you both. And Brian, I'm going to see you on that WHX floor there. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be something that I think is just so interesting. As I mentioned, as a sports scientist, we need to be having these up-to-date conversations on health and wellness and how we make our country healthier. As well, we were chatting to Tom Coleman and then former World Cup winning rugby player Brian Habana about WHX Thrive taking place in Cape Town come the 2nd to the 4th of September. That's all we have time for in your sports bulletin.